giving a hug to them, I can feel, even though if I have already done a session and their bodies already feel a little spaghetti smooshy, relaxed, I can still feel that when I hug them, at least for 15, 20 seconds, I can feel how the whole body even relaxes at a different level.
What would change in the world if you, me, and everyone choose to feed the wolf of possibilities instead of the one of doubt, distrust, and despair? The way I see it, our point of view creates reality, not the other way around. Somewhere deep within, I think we know that. In this podcast, I am daring you to claim this remarkable superpower. Join us and be inspired by trackers, explorers, and finders of possibilities from the multiverse of hope. Welcome to the podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities, with your host, Katarina, Wallentin. Do you ever long to be touched? Or long to just touch someone? Why is that? Why does it matter so much to us? As our guide today, I've invited Eduardo Hernandez, a Mexican osteopath with a background in functional medicine, who works magic with bodies, with the help of, yes, you guessed it, touch. Welcome, Eduardo.
Hello, thank you for having me here, Katarina.
So I would like to dive straight in and ask you, how do you use touch when you work on people, for example, to get information?
One of the things that I learned from a doctor when I was studying osteopathic school, it was to literally ask the body if something is happening. So as I'm working, whether it's in I do more this kind of work in a very subtle touch, like fascia release in a very subtle way. And I start to ask the body if something happened to you when you were, I don't know, I'll give you an example. I will ask you your age and you can tell me, well, okay, I'm 40 years old. So I go, what happened to you when you were 40, when you were 39, 38, 37? So I start to go year by year, and the body, I mean, this is just internal question, me connected to the person's whole body. And I can see and sense if the breath changes, if there is if something changes, So it just lets me. It's not an exact science. Nevertheless, it just lets me so I can work with that patient if that patient allow it, So it's not my power to say I'm gonna dive into you. I ask for the permission of the body on the patient that I'm working on, the person, and if the body responds, I will listen, and then I will talk to that patient.
The information, is it always cognitive or is it also non-cognitive, the kind of information that you get?
Both. Because when I'm with patients, what I see is the way they're physically responding to something, the way if their breath changes, if they look one way or another one, if when I make a question, the eyes looks down. So, like that first part, like it will be more cognitively because I am assessing the way that they're responding. And then as the session continues with a patient, again, and it's not always the same with everybody, nevertheless, is that I start to feel as with the whole skin, or not just the skin, with my whole body, because the whole body is an organ that it can perceive energy, whether it's electromagnetic fields or whether it's I don't want to sound esoteric, but it's like it can receive other people's energy, and then I can start sensing those kind of things. And so I receive information in those both ways, cognitively and then energetically as well, and from asking the bodies, from asking to the body.
I want to go back a little bit. You mentioned something called the electromagnetic field that we all have. And I don't actually think that everybody knows that we have an electromagnetic field and how it functions. So could you just explain that a little bit?
Well, it's the energy that, or at a molecular level, or like, you go from that atomic or molecular level. I'm not a physicist, so I'm not going to be able to explain it 100%. Nevertheless, it is this energy literally that our bodies, from the movement, is created from the movement of that molecular levels that we can sense, and our nerve even, they move through this there is these electrical impulses. So it's just energies of the universe, and we're part of this universe. So
does every living thing have an electromagnetic field?
yes, every living, it is my understanding that every living being, that's why when you go outside into the forest, or you go into the ocean, or you go in the desert, anywhere you go, you can feel it, So, whether it's electromagnetic field, or whether it's a spiritual energy, whether it's more refined matter, there is this forces and this I want to call them forces in the universe, that they're just universal principles, and we are made of that, and we connect to that. So yes.
Thank you for explaining that. That is really helpful. So with that in mind, and also from your experience of working with a lot of people and their bodies, if there is a lack of touch in somebody's life, if they don't have access to touch in the way that they require or desire, what happens? What happens to them? What happens to their bodies?
One of the things that I have learned in life, and I want to say this just in a very humble way, is that there are no rules in life. There are no rules. There are no rules in terms of how it's not exactly how it's always what is gonna always happen to one person, right? And it doesn't make it the determinist. However, what I have learned through my work and my clinical experience, and and of course as well through studies, is that the lack of touch, it literally ages you. Is one risk factor. I'm gonna call it in that way. It's a risk factor. There are many risk factors, in life. This is one of them. That it can take you to many places. Between, let's say to loneliness, aging, feeling overstressed, feeling fearful, hyper responsible, like very sensitive to respond to so many things aggressively as well. It can take away your sleep, it can affect your sleep, it can affect your biorhythms. So it is, this is what I was telling at the beginning, that it's not an exact thing, because it's hard to just narrow to say, oh, the lack of touch will only cause this, because it is always the sum of factors, right? So let's say that you're doing a job that you don't like in a city that you don't like, and then on top of it there is this lack of touch, right? So all these factors will start to aggravate the symptoms, or will start to bring something. And again, because touch and feeling seen and being part of something greater than ourselves, like the sense of belonging, they go together. It is something that is innate in ourselves since the moment that we are babies. This is something that we expect since biologically, since the moment that we're babies. We expect to be touched. We expect to be held. We want to be seen. So that's why we look for that attention naturally. And it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're needy per se as a human being in a wrong way. Of course, when you're a baby, you're needed because you need this support from your tribe, from your parents, so you can grow and keep going. So all of that programs your brain and how it's going to respond. So that's the beauty of it, That's how you can tell when a person has lacked that connection or intimacy, that touch, and I'm gonna call it sensual touch, because that's what is described by other experts. Is like this sensual touch by parents, which is not the same than sexual. So sensual, it is this nurturing and loving, that I see you, you're part of me. This is what is keeping us, one of the things that is keeping us close.
So just to clarify, how would you describe the difference between sensual and sexual touch? Because it's an important difference.
So sensual, it is more that nurturing, loving touch that with a boundary. There is no desire to reproduce. There is no desire to arouse you, or there is no desire of creating any kind of any kind of sexual activity or intercourse. And it's normally, again, it can be done when we're little. It's something naturally that should happen, or that it used to happen by parents, feeling that like that closeness, feeling that warmth. And it's interesting, actually, because when there is this healthy touch, naturally in the brain, it inhibits any desires from the parents to have any sexual activity with kids or with your children, to go into something like that. So that sensual touch also actually protects us in that way. I mean, in that way, but it also protects you in ways to program your nervous system, to program our hormonal responses. So that's, again, maybe I'm repeating myself, but that's the sensual touch. It's very nurturing, protective, loving touch without any intention of any sexual activity. And of course, the sex touch, it is with the intention of reproducing or of pleasure, that it goes into that other aspect.
So it's interesting because a lot of times of the fear of anything being interpreted as sexual, I think that often the sensual touch can be cut off as well in order to not accidentally be interpreted as sexual.
Indeed, it's again the belief. Well, again, this has to do with the belief system, the culture where you were born. How, again, this is the belief system. Belief system comes from the family where you were born, and then in the society group that you were born. And it also changes. You have traveled the world, this, and people who have traveled the world will agree. When people who live in colder places tends to be a little bit more close about themselves, there is this less touch. And people who live, let's say, in the Caribbean or like sunny places, they're more open, more touchy, more, like that interaction. So it has to do a lot with that sense of belief. But even though nowadays, no matter where you are in the world, as a very general concept, touch is something that is being missed. And there is this now misinterpretation from it, again, because one of the things that can happen through life, along with other factors, but touch is there, the lack of touch, it creates an environment of untrust, like an environment in ourselves, and that we don't want to receive as much because we have grew up now, or this is what is happening, that being vulnerable, it means that you're weak. Right? So vulnerable, in other words, it means I'm open to receive. And I trust this other person. So of course, if you continue building this lack of touch in your life and this disconnection, you close more and close more. So then you don't allow yourself to receive it. And you're just missing a huge a benefit, like health benefit in your life.
Well, in our conversations before, you mentioned an article that you had read that was really fascinating to you. It was called, I think, Why the Lack of Touch is Destroying Men. Could you talk about that? Like why that was speaking to you, that particular topic?
Yes. I don't exactly recall perfectly the title of the book, of this article, and neither where I read it. But it was something like that. Is how the lack of touch is destroying or affecting men. Something like this, right? Men as a gender, not just as a specific gender. And I will speak about my own experience growing up as a teenager and as a child. Well, just my personal experience in general. From the moment, of course, that you're a child, the sex hormones haven't played a big role yet in terms of your development. You receive touch from many sources. Loving touch. My brothers, my mother, other kids playing, like the grandmother, the grandfather, whatever. And then you grow up. And then suddenly, touch became like a taboo kind of thing, right? Because for men, of course, as the sexual hormones are developing as well, and you start to feel other sensations, it can become embarrassing in a way. And then it can be like very criticized, like, oh, you're having an erection, or oh, this is what is happening to you, or you don't know what you're feeling. And there is no, like I will say from my own experience, of course, there was lack of explanation in sexuality as well, like overall in the school, in the culture, and etc. But you continue like this, right? And then between other men, of course, it becomes a kind of a joke, like, oh, you're like a way to make fun of another man, like, oh, you're gay, like, or you're homosexual, or you're this, and you shouldn't be touching other men, and you shouldn't be doing this. So then you stop, receiving a hug or receiving love from other men even. And then again, as a teenager or as a young adult, of course, if you come to a woman, because with all the hormones happening, it could be also misinterpreted. So then suddenly you stop receiving this touch from your mother, or from your father, or from friends, or from other members of the family. Again, this is very generalization. It doesn't mean that it happens to everybody. But that was what the article was talking about, how little by little man gets pushed away from that touch, and he doesn't get to experience again that sensual touch until that man maybe or maybe not becomes a father. Or when you have a partner, of course, but then it becomes very limited, that access, like if you have a partner, you receive that touch, but if you're not, or if you don't have a good circle of friends, then you don't receive it. So again, depending the circumstances, but in general, it is that how it gets pushed, and there is this social or socio-political absence of touch for men, and they start to maybe feel it again until they become parents or not. I remember, along with this article I was reading at the time, and other studies saying how criminal activity, for instance, it is larger in men. And when they have studied these men who are in prison with criminal activity, they realized one of the factors that has been lacking, or one of the factors that pushed them in that way, was not having, touch or love from parents, or not having a good social community where they felt that they were hugged or that they felt love. They felt that they were fitting in, which is a different concept, fitting in, than belonging. So you can see again another example of how that lack of touch, it affects you, and it changes you to do things that normally or naturally you wouldn't go against your own community or your own humanity. But it is sometimes, and I'm careful with this how I'm saying it, however, it's like a desperate need to be seen. I'm not being seen, I'm not being touched when I'm listening or when I'm being a good person. So I'm going to do these things so somebody look at me at least.
Yes. Thank you for diving into that. One of the few ways that even men are allowed to touch each other is via the hug. Hugging is really one of the things that are accepted as a way of touching each other in most cultures. Not all, and most of them. So could you talk a little bit about the hug and what a hug is and what it creates?
In a very general way, sometimes we want to follow these social laws or rules, not laws, rules, to fit in. And the intention, it counts a lot. And this is not just in hug, this is just in life. This is something for me vital in my personal life, and what I see clinically as well, is what is the intention behind what are you doing? And if that intention, what is it gonna, what is the cost benefit, in other words? And the way that we give a hug, again, the intention that it is behind, it will, have one effect or the other one in the body. So there is a study, and I don't recall the name exactly, but if you go on Google, you will be able to find it, like the effects of hugs and how long should they last. You will be able to find a lot of information about this of smarter people than me who have investigated about it. So I know overall that there is this difference between like a quick hug, again, just as a social, rule, or doing a hug for 5 seconds or for 15 seconds or for 20 or for 30, for 40, for a whole minute, And what I have experienced personally, and I'm gonna talk more in a clinical, a little bit both clinical and personal experience. So in a clinical experience, normally, I'm touching in that way, and I break that barrier with my patients, whether it's a man or a woman. Giving a hug to them, I can feel, even though if I have already done a session and their bodies already feel a little spaghetti smooshy, relaxed, I can still feel that when I hug them, at least for 15, 20 seconds, I can feel how the whole body even relaxes at a different level. It's like if I literally feel like something is being turned down, like something is coming down. In a way, the longer the hug you do with somebody, or not just somebody, but with another human being that you're allowing or that you're receiving, it creates this deep state of protection, of feeling safe, of I feel seen, I matter, I feel loved. And again, through touch is one beautiful way that we regulate the stress system, the stress mechanism, the axis. We regulate the brain, we regulate the peripheral responses of the body. So again, the longer it lasts, and especially with people in your tribe, it creates this bonding, this connection, this sense of safety. I'm being seen, I matter, I feel loved, I feel important. So it's very nurturing and it's very healing.
So with your son who just came in, how often do you hug him?
Every so often, every time that I have a chance. I hug him for, I don't know, sometimes he pushed me away, of course. There is no rules in terms of, again, it needs to always last 20 seconds exactly, or 40 seconds or whatever. But every so often, I hug him, I give him a kiss, I remind him that I love him. He comes naturally by himself and hug me. And it's very interesting. I'm gonna share this. This is very personal in my personal life, with my family, with my son. There was this time, he's 5-year-old right now. And last year when he was 4, or 2 years ago when he was 3, we were at a supermarket walking, and he used to go and run and hug other kids from any age, like his own age or a little older or older. And it was fascinating to see the response of these other kids. If they receive him or if they wouldn't receive him. And I say it's interesting because it will give me a little bit of information of how that child, his family or life environment was like. And I saw from other kids fully hugging my son and embracing it without any judgmental or like, who are you? What are you hugging me? Like, no, just receive it. And then I will see other kids who wouldn't know what to do, that they will literally freeze. Like they will stiff, the bodies will become stiff, and they will look into their parents or try to look into somebody else's eyes, like, what do I do? What is happening? Again, this is something natural that it is expected in our life since the moment that we were born. It is all right. This is why we have survived as human beings, because we are received into a tribe, into a family. We are seen, we belong. And it's something that it needs to be recuperated. And I believe it's going to little by little. So, you can start with yourself, hugging yourself, allowing yourself with your, closest family, or if there is no like blood family, your chosen family, tribe, culture, anywhere, but it's something that it needs to be recuperated. I recently posted something in my social media saying, for what is worth it, is never too late nor too early.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to go and let you hug your son now. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities. I hope you have more space in your world now. If you would like to listen to earlier episodes, share it with other people, or subscribe, please go to Spotify, iTunes, or visit KatarinaVallentin.com/wolf.